regularly on social media pushing that this is the best. Mr. Innovation, Saul Kaplan from Business Innovation Factory, here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Hey, Josh.
Welcome. We haven't seen you in a little bit,
Good
right?
to be here. No, I missed a week. I was out in California. It was nice to be out there. I spent some time in LA. And of course, I see the news about Coach Hurley from you.
Yeah.
Like a little bone to pick with you. A little early on that, don't you think?
I think we were right, proven right yet again, and all the haters had to swallow their Facebook and tweets. Our competitors once again were less than pleased that we got that. We'd gotten Cooley getting hired. Scott Cordishi broke. Cooley getting hired 10 days early. We knew Jim. I believe we knew Jim Barron was getting fired before he did.
Yeah,
we had Dan Hurley getting hired before anybody else.
Yeah.
It is a proven proficiency of us.
So if
that
it turns
we work
out to
these.
have been right, it's okay that you were early.
Come
on.
Let me tell you this. I think we were late. This thing had been in the hopper going back a significant period of time, and I think Jim Calhoun's involvement was very, very significant, and he was de facto the mastermind of Kevin Ollie's demise and Danny Hurley going to stores.
Yeah.
And I'll also say this, listen, if you or I wants to compete, match the dollars. Supposedly the wife wants to stay, loved Rhode Island, loved the quality of life, well, write the check. I mean, it's
a good.
It's not that complicated.
It's a good move for Hurley. It's great for UConn. If we wanted to be where UConn is and have the resources, we had to make those investments 20 years ago to lead up to today. So it wasn't just throw more money at Hurley.
No,
it was a program, and it's not even just basketball. It's the whole university, and we're doing some things right at URI more recently. You know, we're supporting them more than we were before, but we've got a long way to go. And all we have to do is look over the border at how strong UConn. Just drive down to stores
Absolutely.
to see what's going on there. So it's bigger than
and
just
UMass is
basketball, right?
making the same. They're taking their
Right.
football team. I mean, talk about athletics, but go to those campuses and you just see they
Right.
look like Boston
No, I think
with
that's
cranes everywhere.
That's right. And URI's in a much better place.
I'm going to
and
argue
so-
that one.
Yeah, no,
I think that's urban myth. I think they're just the same places when Jack Kraft got sick and Claude English took over. It's still an underfunded, underperforming athletic department. There's only 11 sports. We had Jack Hayes here from Brown University. He has 38 Division I sports at Brown University. It's a lot of different. That's a lot of resources. That's a lot of assistant coaches.
Well, that I agree with, but just focusing on basketball.
How's that football team doing?
Well, no, of course, if you put the football team in and you put some other things in, then we can debate concentration of resources. But if you just single out basketball, they're in a better place than they were. And I think if they make the right choice here, they can continue to build on their success. So I'm anxious to see who they pick. But you didn't want to talk just basketball.
We did not want to talk about basketball. I want to pick up a little bit on the theme that Gary Sass, and we're just beginning into the silly season of electoral politics, and everybody's coming out with their ideas and their critiques of each other. And there's 27 people running for governor. I mean, there is a lot of people running for governor, and there's a lot of viable people running for governor, and they're all starting to pitch their ideas and thoughts. And it's interesting. We have them on here regularly, and I don't hear big ideas of innovation. I don't hear transformative, like, wow, I never thought of that. That's a big idea. Oh, they do it in Amsterdam. Let's do it here. Whatever it might be. Why is that narrative not a driving force? Your friend Weber just won. I bet you he talked a lot about innovation running for mayor of Santa Fe. He thinks about it. He talks about it. He gets excitement about it. People get inspired by it. Why isn't that part of our narrative here?
Well, the reason that, and I think that this is absolutely right. I don't care what political party you're in. I don't give high grades to either party or any of the groups for innovation. Right? I think we have a lot of work to do here. I think it's primarily because, let's remember, everybody loves innovation until it affects them, right? And so the minute you lay out an idea that is going to change the way things are today, there are going to be some people who might like that idea, but the chances are pretty good that there are going to be more people who are going to see that idea as threatening to the status quo. So if you're a politician and you go all in on innovation, innovation. We've got to transform the place.
Right.
Right? You better have a real case to be made to enough people that can A, get you elected, and then B, that when you're governing the whole state, you
Right.
can get the support for them. So what you end up with are politicians, one, because they're worried about who they're going to affect negatively with their messaging, two, because the political cycle is so short that a lot of the things we need to do are going to take longer than a political cycle.
Absolutely.
They end up coming back to what's on the ground today, what are the smaller, more incremental things we can do that I can deliver with credibility that people are going to support. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a time where that's not sufficient, that the solutions we need are bolder than that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't match up with the way politicians and the way we support political leaders, right, and the political cycle, that we have to make a choice in. So you can't blame politicians, for coming back to the incremental.
But I could make some arguments that some busted through on innovation ideas, whether you like the idea or not. John Kennedy actually ran against Richard Nixon on building up the defense industry after what he said that Nixon and Eisenhower had depleted our defense. Later came, the space initiative. Later on, it was Bill Clinton. He was a young guy talking about innovation, transforming the technological. That was a growth. Whether you like it or not, Donald Trump talking about a wall with Mexico is innovation. It's a big idea. Whether it's it may not be a good idea. It may not be, but it was, and people grasped that. People understood that. Well, jobs, immigration might that base that he was trying to talk to. What I'm surprised at is none of them so far. Right. I mean, it's still early, but you just don't hear it in the narrative. You hear it about efficiency and streamlining and da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
The other thing that we have here is what I always refer to as we play a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Right? We're small size.
Yeah.
Everybody's fighting for resource and positioning. The population is flat.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of growth and new revenue coming in.
Yeah.
Right? To allow you to do something new. So now the only way to innovate is you have to take resources that exist in the current budget and you have to redeploy it towards something that's new. It's not like you have this bucket of money that you can deploy to the new stuff. And so when you're in a growth, either growing population and growing economy, you can both fund the base budget, and programs that people want, and you can invest in what's new. Here in Rhode Island, we've been in this circle chasing our tails around zero-sum game thinking, which is the base budget is the base budget. We can barely afford to sustain it. And so that if you look at the list of the things that are new or different, it's really precious and hard to come by new programs. You have to break that cycle.
Is part of it leadership, though? I mean, Bruce Sutherland, I think he got elected, he was in his 70s, right? But he talked about big things. It was in a recession, arguably a depression in Rhode Island. As he took office, but we were in a severe recession going into it. Then the credit union crisis, we went into really a depression mode by all measures of how you define a depression. But he said, listen, we're going to build stuff. I mean, it was almost an FDR kind of message. We're going to build an airport. We're going to build a convention center. That's right. And he built them. He didn't care if people liked the idea or didn't like the idea.
There's the key.
Yeah.
All the leaders you talked about that now with hindsight, you look back and say they did really bold things.
Yeah.
They thought very big. Right. And they did it without regard to whether the polling numbers were there to support the idea, and they stayed with it. And you just cited the examples of folks that weren't doing that. And you're right. We need more leaders that are bolder. I always say you have to think big, you have to start small, and scale fast. So you need big concepts that people can migrate to. That's what we all, when John Kennedy said we were going to go to the moon. Big idea. Nobody thought we could do it, and then he mobilized to do it. He thought big. He started small with what is it that we need? What are the technologies we need? How do we advance the program?
And by the way, we didn't land on the move till 6 years, 5 years after he had died.
And so we're in a period now where we need that kind of leadership because the tweaks aren't working, and we need more innovation and more transformation. And so we've got to be a lot more creative about how we can get at some of the resources that are sitting in the base budget and deploy them into what's next. And that's hard politically to do because the minute you try to move dollar number one from the base budget, whoever had that dollar before is gonna resist that, they're gonna lobby.
Are they that much about dollars, though? I mean, a
Yes.
lot of the things, you think they are?
Yes.
You think you can't innovate without having the, pile of cash over there and move it to be able to do
I think
those
you can,
elements?
innovation doesn't start with the dollars.
Yeah.
But that big idea, you
Yeah.
don't get to the moon.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have the big idea.
Yeah.
Unless you can deploy dollars to the technologies and the programs that'll get you to the moon.
Right.
Right? So yeah, you have to think big, but then you have to be able to allocate resources and people's time and activities to that. In government, particularly in state government, especially when you're like Rhode Island, where we have had very little room for new programs.
Yeah.
As long as you're gonna keep funding the base budget, right, then what you have is a real problem freeing up those resources, because people are gonna squawk like crazy the minute you try to touch the base budget. I saw this in a small way when I was working in state government. It was almost presumed that the base budget was gonna
Right.
be there. And so what you ended up with is everything you were worried about in terms of growth and
But
innovation was on the margin.
But if you
Right.
don't do something, that base budget is just gonna get a little bit smaller and a little bit
Oh.
smaller every year.
Well, there's the imperative. And so what we need are leadership that can help us understand why it's important to do it, right? And kind of work the coalitions that can get us to free up the resources. So no, I don't think it's all about the resources, but I don't think you can be a leader and drive innovation unless you can figure out how to allocate resources towards what you're trying to do.
Well, let's talk about the economics. We've had some big innovations, some of them here, some of them elsewhere, and the street doesn't always respond well. CVS buying Aetna the stock has, I don't want to say tumbled, but it's lost significant value, maybe about 15% since that deal was announced, in a time where the market, for the most part, has been up. Facebook obviously hitting a little bit of a
Right.
hiccup over the past few days. We'll find out what the implications of that are. And then the third element is Uber, who seems to be in this cycle I don't know, self-inflicted. I mean, some of it's unfair and some of it's not so unfair.
Right.
Some of it, the communication still seems to be tricky. Let's start with CVS. CVS and Aetna still going through the federal regulatory review, still answering some questions to the Justice Department. But the street has not said, "Oh my God, that is an amazing, strategic, brilliant move. I can't wait till this deal closes. We're all in. We're going to be a part of this." Instead, it's been, ooh, I don't know about
Because
this.
it's not a straightforward valuation. If
Yeah.
you just take the sum of the parts and value each of the silos, the different businesses, that they're in and will be in if they consummate this merger, then if you just value that based on traditional multiples for
Yep.
those industry slices, right, that's not very exciting. What
Mhm.
you have to do is you have to be able to show that 1 + 1 is 5,
Yep.
and that you should be valuing our company differently.
Yep.
Right? Or you need to be like Jeff Bezos and position yourself where you'll figure it out. We're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, right.
And not worry so much about what that valuation is on any
Right.
given day. Easy to say, hard to do. I believe CVS Aetna ultimately will be a 1 + 1 = 5. They've got a lot of work to do in order to pull that off, but that's where the different multiples and the new valuations are going to come from. And yeah, traditional Wall Street's going to be slow to get that. So that's what the urgency is, for them. To
Do you
be
think
able
when
to do
that
it.
deal closes, and I think it's presumed that it's going to close, you never know. I know some of the other major media mergers have run into some problems and are still getting vetted. But when that thing closes, now they've almost had extra time. Do you think they'll be that further along that they'll be able to flick the switch, announce the consolidations, move along, and start launching new
Well,
initiatives?
I don't know. I can only speculate based on what we see and what
Yeah.
we read, but it's never a flick the switch. I mean,
Yeah.
it's never like that.
Yeah.
It's a narrative, a story, and then you start putting evidence and points on the board that support that to where, whether it's investors or stakeholders, start to believe that that story is real and is.
Well, I
that
mean,
they
it
can
flicked the
produce it.
switch. I
Right.
just mean that, listen, if it had gotten approved quickly, maybe they wouldn't know where all the cost savings are, and they wouldn't have those elements. But now you're gonna be in a situation where they've had really an extra, I think arguably 3 months or so, that they'll be for that much further
Which is not
along.
a terribly long time to work through
No.
this at their scale.
Right.
But the truth is, it's easier to predict the cost savings,
Yeah.
and to make choices with clear returns than it is on the upside, which is to say 1 + 1 is 5.
Right.
Here's the new way we're going to create customer value. They're going to have to explore their way there, experiment their way there. There's no question, that they're thinking about that, and they got to get through the approvals first.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
they're not sitting back waiting, I'm sure, to have those conversations, and I think it's gonna take some time to play that out. It starts with being really clear about the narrative and how you can imagine creating more value for customers while realizing the cost savings around the synergies, which are the more predictable pieces.
Let's jump to Facebook. Facebook
Yep.
obviously has probably gotten more negative press, more public scrutiny.
Yep.
Announced today, the Federal Trade Commission is going to conduct a significant investigation. Listen, under the Trump administration, this is not the most rigorous regulatory environment that we've ever seen.
When did you become a diplomat?
I'll be surprised if the Federal Trade Commission is even around next week. They've blown out the EPA for all intents and purposes.
Right.
But this is really the first major hiccup that this just rocketing company has had to face in its 10-year
Well,
history.
it's not the first one, but it's certainly the most significant one, and it comes at a pretty important time. And it's not just Facebook, the whole surveillance economy, the whole business model around the emerging World Wide Web,
Yeah.
that ended up where the business models that worked and scaled were based on advertising,
Yeah.
Which by definition were always going to be about micro-targeting.
Yeah.
Right? They were always about selling advertising, and we came in for free, and you know the line that's going around now, if it's for free, you are the product.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Absolutely.
and here we are, we're the
Yeah.
product, right? We allowed it to happen,
Right.
And now we're having to sort through the consequences of that. That's true for us as consumers. That's certainly true for Facebook, in terms of how they're going to handle it, and it's going to be a long haul for them while we're trying to sort out. The question really becomes: are there other business models? Would you be more likely? I mean, we're happy to be on Facebook and we don't pay,
Mhm.
and we allow the surveillance, micro-targeting thing to happen.
Yep.
And then sometimes we like it. It's like innovation we like,
Right.
when it helps us make a
Right.
better choice or see a movie because our friends like it.
Right.
Yeah, we like that. Well, now all of a sudden we don't like it because somebody took the information and used it to manipulate us,
Yeah.
to put in place a president that a lot of us don't like. Right, so all of a sudden now we're all up in arms. We shouldn't be surprised by any of this.
No.
We really shouldn't.
0.0.
And so now the question becomes: I'll ask you, if I put up a new platform tomorrow and I ask you to pay me for that, here's what we're going to do with your personal information. We're going to use blockchain to make sure it's secure, and no one's using it. But in order for that business model to work, you've got to pay up front, right? No different than the newspapers or television. Like, who pays?
Right.
And if you can't make the revenue through advertising, then I need subscription basis or I need some other way,
Right.
in order to do it. So instead of looking at them and saying they're the bad guys, and there's plenty of reason to do that. Don't get me wrong, but we also have to point at ourselves and say, wait a minute, would you be willing to pay? Does the value that a Twitter or a Facebook, do you value that enough to be able to pay for it? And then the question becomes, do enough of us value it to pay for it?
Listen,
so that we get the network effect, so all of our friends are there.
There's 1.2 billion televisions in the world. There's over 2 billion Facebook users in the world.
No.
So, if 50 million globally deactivate because of this,
So what?
yeah, right.
So what if you're Facebook, other than managing the PR?
Right.
But and frankly, the bigger problem is going to be, you're right. We're just going to start seeing the hearings now because all the politicians are going to want to be into this.
Right.
So everybody's going to sit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be dual-edged. They're going to be into it, but they don't want to be too far into it because it makes their campaigns a lot more efficient.
No kidding.
I mean, listen. Just like Dunkin' Donuts could tell you about a new colada, why can't Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders tell you about their position on trade?
You don't think Jeff Bezos has just as much information, given his big database, that he's using to figure out how to create new products and services for
I
us,
thought Tim
right?
Cook, CEO of Apple, criticizing Facebook might have been the most absurd thing of this entire thing.
Right.
By the way, if everyone deactivated their Facebook account, you might as well throw your iPhone away as well, because
you
right,
Right.
you can go back to one of those.
But you're right.
big
I think
buttons.
I think we're going to really start asking the question about the private information and how do we provide access to it, and what business models are going to emerge as a result of that. And so we'll see what happens. I think you find a fair number of people, maybe a large number of people, who, if they could continue to get at it for free,
Yeah.
would tolerate the fact that that information is going to be used and resold in other purposes, and they would do it, right?
Listen, they've created a great sandbox and invited everybody to play in it. And when you sign
They
up,
did.
it's pretty clear. Everything you post is ours. I mean, that's literally what it says. They could make it one line. I mean, it's better than a credit card legalese. They make it pretty clear that if you sign up, anything you post is accessible.
This is true. All information that goes into our medical records, that goes into our education, transcripts from the
Right.
colleges we graduated from, even to the pacemaker, that transmits, through the web,
Right.
And how your heart beats. Go try to get your own information from the companies that have
Yeah,
that.
forget it.
Right? Like, this is not just Facebook.
Right.
This is about how we live in a network world where information is going to flow, and the question is always going to be, how secure is it, and is it my information, and do I control what happens to it? And so if consumers start to play a more active role in answering those questions, I think that is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe it's gotten too far, too fast. A lot of people made a lot of money from that. It's time to pull it back and to say, what's the economy that we want? It's your information. What happens to it when you post it? But you gotta look at the business models, and you can't expect I'm going to get it for free.
Right.
It's like saying I should get the newspaper and all the information on it for free digitally, right? Because it's out there.
We're
Right?
going
Well,
to
somebody has to produce the thing, right?
To promote GoLocal's
Right.
content, we're going with all town criers. We're going to put town criers on all that. Last thing, Uber's having more Uber-esque problems. I think all of us thought with this new, young, smart CEO out of Brown University that all was going to
That's
be
right.
great. He had a humiliating tweet that I think caught him into some trouble. Then we had a driverless car kill a
I
person
saw that.
in
Yeah.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
And a very public Uber driver raping a woman up in Boston reported last week. Is this another area in which innovation has outpaced protection, and that there needs to be a better balance between how fast and how quickly, how successful some of these companies are moving, and some protections for consumers, et cetera?
Well, it's a yes and,
Yeah.
right? Because if you take the Uber situation, I'm going to focus on the pedestrian fatality
Yeah.
that happened. There are going to be fatalities,
Just
as
like with regular
autonomous
cars.
vehicles. If you actually look at the data, I think we're going to find that there's an incredible case to be made that there are going to be far fewer fatalities than there are with human error about sitting behind the wheel. That doesn't mean that every fatality, is a terrible, terrible
I don't mean to
thing.
laugh at that, but will Rhode Island autonomous vehicles be much worse drivers than other parts of the country? Will Rhode Island autonomous vehicles not use their blinker?
Yeah.
Will they flip you off?
Yeah.
Will they tailgate? I mean,
Yeah.
are we gonna make
Yeah.
these things culturally
But here's what I
appropriate?
think is going on at Uber, because I think everybody saw that news, and when they put the Deep Six on their autonomous, or at least temporarily,
Yeah.
everyone said it's because of the fatality. I don't think so.
Yeah.
The truth is they were way behind the other players. Here comes the new CEO.
And didn't they steal
right,
somebody
right.
else's data
Well, there
to
was
set
some-
up there,
well,
then
there-
pay them off $300 million?
Put
If you're
aside the-
gonna steal somebody's,
You
somebody's.
should at least be ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
You should at least be
What
ahead.
a mistake
The truth
that
was that they were really far behind. And so here comes the new CEO trying to say, do we continue to invest in this?
Yeah.
The amount of capital that would need to be deployed to be one of a few successful players in autonomous vehicles is huge. And I think they had already made the determination that they got to find a nice way to slow this down or to get out of this investment. And that pedestrian fatality, however unfortunate it is,
Yeah.
and was not the reason that they stopped the program.
Yeah.
Right? They would have figured out how to message that.
I think there was
that
some press reports that the pedestrian was at fault.
Yeah. Well, either way, I mean, just even talking about
Yeah.
a fatality,
Right.
kind of gives me the,
Right.
you know what. But the truth is that Uber was not well positioned in this,
Yeah.
and it is a sinkhole of capital. If
Yeah.
you want to play to win, you're competing against some very deep pockets. And I think the new CEO in the end probably made the decision, and this was a graceful way for him
Let's
to
not build
exit.
our own, let's buy
That's
somebody
what I think
else's.
is going on here. So I don't think it's this big, kind of trend about. I do think you're going to have some people that are going to try to slow down autonomous vehicles, right? And there does need to be regulations around autonomous vehicles. Doesn't mean that we have to stop it.
Yeah.
I think the people that are going to try to stop it are more the vested interests
Yeah, right.
in the way the transportation systems work today, and they're going to cloak it in public safety. But it's not true. I don't think it's true. I think that the cool thing about autonomous vehicles is I think the regulation should force all the players, right, to create standards for how the data gets shared. So every time there's a fatality or an accident, not just the company that got affected learns, but that we all learn and they can put into the software. They got to make that open source so the learning of it doesn't
Is
matter.
shared across regardless
and so
who
we
the
all learn
developer,
together so
yeah.
that the software keeps getting better and better, and so that we have fewer accidents and fewer fatalities. If you start to see proprietary systems
Yeah.
where it's my data,
Right.
and it's not the other autonomous vehicle, what they're doing is sub-optimizing the learning, which would prevent more people from being hurt. That's where regulation should come in.
Last thing,
Yep.
Biff, coming up on us fast.
Oh my goodness, here we go.
Are we ready? Give us one big
listen,
free agent
that-
signing,
right.
a new speaker nobody knows about,
Well,
who's
I'm
coming
going to
this
tell
year.
you one everybody here in Rhode Island knows about. I always want to make sure there's Rhode Islanders amongst us in the
Yeah.
mix, right? So we just asked, and he's agreed. We just asked Perry Rosso to be a storyteller at this year's
Great.
summit. So for those of you who don't know, we happen to love the Matunic Oyster Bar.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
big oyster fans.
Yeah.
And Perry's
Is
a
this a
URI grad.
Is this a trade deal?
But
Is this a trade
it's
deal?
not like the kind of deal you create here. This was a legitimate. This guy's got a story to share.
He does have a real story.
And he is about sustainable farming and disrupting the way that works.
Absolutely.
He is there every time you go to the restaurant.
Yeah.
He is personally there, carrying plates around.
Is he bringing oysters?
I haven't asked him to bring oysters. It's not
what
a
kind of
try-
entrepreneur are you?
Well, I'm
We're going with last year's hot dogs?
I'm a purist.
They were good hot dogs. I'll give you
I
credit for
don't
that.
want anybody to say to me, I put him on the stage because he brought an oyster. But Barry's going to speak. I'm really excited about this. I think he's got a real cool story to share, and I want
That's a
Rhode
great
Island
one.
stories to be in the mix.
That's a big one. That's a big one. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned at 7 o'clock. Big performance on the Alex and Ani Lounge, our first nighttime performance going live at 7 p.m. Thank everybody for tuning in with Molly O'Brien, who had a great lineup today, and for tuning in on Business Monday. We'll be back tomorrow. Ava Gaudet at 3 o'clock, Kate Nagel at 4 o'clock. Does it get any better? Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. See you at 7 p.m. tonight.